So this intervention actually is a really good tool to help you recognize the patterns, the triggers, the thoughts that you're having consistently, the emotions you're consistently having.
Your emotions is what the brain is constructing. Emotions aren't just something that just magnificently happen that you don't have any control over. Matter of fact, you have more control over your emotions.
Hi everybody, and welcome to another episode of Evolve Ventures, where we are making evolution possible for growth-minded humans through vulnerable lessons, stories, and technology. I'm your host, Bianca Thomas.
And I am your host, Emilia Smith. Welcome back to another episode, 130, 3 tips to understand how to handle your emotions. So if you're like many people out there, you probably have never had the thought that like my brain is technology. And I want to introduce and kind of pull that into this episode because I think it's a great opportunity for us to kind of open our minds, right? If you're a growth-minded human being listening to this episode, there's definitely something in here that's ready for you, right? So when it comes to handling our emotions and the tips that Bianca and I are going to share in here, we found these to be super duper duper effective with our clients, with our community members, with all the people that we interact with on a day-to-day basis. And honestly, it's quite simple. But here's the thing. Before we even get into the strategy around that, right? The meat and potatoes, I want to make sure that we start with the belief that our brains are the most incredible technology that exists, right? The phones that we have, the computers that we have, all of these things, right? Light bulbs even, all of that is energy that has been harnessed that already exists within your mind, within your brain, right? So when it comes to technology and your brain, those in the concept of what we're going to be talking about here are synonyms, are the same, right? Your brain is the most incredible technology. So with that being said, setting up this conversation, we have a general belief that is out there and has been passed down for many generations that emotions are something that just drive our life, right? They come up like the seasons of the wind and we don't know necessarily how to handle them. And so often do we find ourselves in a position where emotions come and they overwhelm us. That's called emotional flooding. And we don't necessarily know how to handle ourselves to the extent that we might want to when that happens. So how many of us have actually been in that position where you said something maybe you didn't mean? Your girls have been there, right? So Bianca and I, coming from the backgrounds that we do, we're fascinated by this stuff, right? So why are we doing things? Why are we saying things? Why are we being people that we don't necessarily want to be, or we have regret, or we have shame around? And a lot of it comes back down to this fundamental understanding that emotions are something that we don't have control over. Data shows that from a neuroscience perspective, we have new data, all right? So let's welcome that in.
It ain't true.
As human beings with this technology that we have, the brain, the brain is constructing our emotions. And this, for many people, like it was initially when I heard this new data, it like rocked my world.
Can I pause you for a second?
Yeah.
So the data is that emotions don't just come up. It's not something that just happens to us. It is something we create. So we create our emotion. That's what she means by it's constructed.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So, and I think that that's actually, while that might shake our worlds in our own different ways and might be like, what the hell? What do you mean by that? I think it after you kind of let that dust settle, it for me at least, it gave me a sense of like bewilderment, fascination, somewhat frustration. But then what ultimately came on the other end of this was empowerment and how incredible it is that our brains are naturally constructing and creating emotional concepts based off of how we've been conditioned, how we've grown up, our environments that we're in, the people that are around us. And so there's no better place to examine when emotions are at play being created than when it comes to family. All right? Or am I right? So Bianca and I, like I said, in this episode, we want to share with you 3 tips that have been really fundamental in our coaching, been fundamental in our own lives, and honestly, cornerstone understanding to be able to help us through those really critical moments when we do need to handle our emotions and maybe even reconstruct them. So B, how's that
You
sound?
gave away the plot. No, we weren't going to say family yet. It's all good.
Oh, shoot. My bad. Y'all, I'm just out here getting all excited. In case you haven't heard, like, this is one of my favorite topics to talk about. I'm nerding out right here. Right. Sorry.
So what Emilia and I did was we made an acronym. We made a mnemonic to go over the 3 different tools, the 3 different tips that we want to give all of you. And the mnemonic or the acronym is
A
PIE.
shortcut. Brain
The
shortcut.
shortcut is PIE. P-I-E. So the P stands for patterns. You've heard us talk about in previous episodes how we have emotional patterns. We have patterns that, like certain places we'll go, certain people will be around, certain things that we always say. We live in patterns. We live in loops. And what we want to be able to do is to understand the patterns of who, what, when, where, and why our emotions are coming out. So, to the spoiler alert that Emilia gave away, a pattern for me, a trigger that I know always happens is I know that certain emotions come up whenever I go around my family. Not as much anymore, right? Because I've done a lot of work into this, but I'll talk about beforehand, right? So a pattern was I knew whenever I went around my family, I had this really uncomfortable feeling come up. So that's the pattern, right? That's P. That's the first thing. Recognize what are the patterns. Where are the places you typically go where you're like, nope, don't like that? Where are the places that you go where it's like, oh my God, I love being here, and you always get excited to go? Where are the people? Who are the people that bring out that certain emotion in you that it's like they don't even have to say anything and they trigger you, right? I know I have people like that. So number 1, recognize what those patterns are. The second one is identify emotions. Identify the emotions that are coming up for you. So I know whenever I went around my family, I would feel alone. I would feel sad. I would feel judged. I would feel neglected. I would feel shame. I noticed myself feeling all of these emotions based on, and it was a pattern. Right? So the first one is patterns, where, what, who. So the triggers and the shortcuts. I is identify. What are the emotions that you were consistently feeling in those certain places, whether it's good or bad?
This
The
is the
third
why.
one.
Sorry,
Yes.
just really quick before you go into the third. This is the why. So these are why the patterns are coming up. Why? Because you had previous experiences and the emotions are being constructed by your brain to make sure that you're protected, that you feel that you can be safe, that you can quote unquote survive this emotional experience. So they hijack you and take the wheel. So this is the why.
Thank you. The third one is emotional intervention. So this is, okay, what do I do? How can I resolve this? How can I recognize these patterns and recognize the emotions that are coming up? So this is the how. I've talked about this multiple times on the show and we've gone through this a few times, but the tool that we are going to give with this, the emotional intervention, the I of the pie, or the E of the pie, is a thought record. So I've done this with so many of my clients. We presented this tool in Out of the Mud last month, and I've had clients tell me that this has been a transformative experience for them just in filling these out for a couple of days. Because most of my clients and most people, in all honesty, they don't realize the patterns and the emotions and the thoughts that they are consistently having and running on a day-to-day basis. So this intervention actually is a really good tool to help you recognize the patterns, the triggers, the thoughts that you're having consistently, the emotions you're consistently having, and the reactions and the behaviors that you're doing. So the first part of this thought record is actually identify the trigger. What is the thing that is going on? Where are you? Who are you around? Lay out the scene. What just happened? The second part of it is identify the thought. What just went through your head? Was it an idea? Was it a memory? Was it an image? Was it a specific word? Was it a picture? What was it? Something just came up. Something was thought about. A perception was just had. That is causing you to feel whatever the feeling is that you're having. Now, this is the science behind the fact that emotions are constructed. Our perception of the situation that we are in, the interpretation, what we are telling ourselves about the scenario that we are in, that is what creates the emotion that you're feeling. It constructs it. Because what we tell ourselves about what's going on, it causes our experience of the thing. It causes us to have a certain emotion. So for example, let's say Emilia and I both are walking and we see a dog. Let's say I love dogs. I've had amazing experiences with dogs. Dogs to me are these happy-go-lucky creatures. Let's say Emilia got bit by a dog when she was a kid. And ever since then, she's been terrified of them. So we're both experiencing the same thing. We're walking, we're seeing a dog. The situation is the same exact thing. But Emilia, a memory pops into her head of when she got bit, and she tells herself that this is dangerous and something bad could happen. So what is she going to feel? Probably fear. What am I going to feel? Excitement. Because I'm telling myself, oh my God, I love dogs. Oh my God, what a beautiful dog. I'm so excited. Maybe I can pet it. So I'm feeling excited. What we do with that emotion comes next. Emilia might book it, and I'm going to try to walk up to the dog. So it's a very simple tool that will help you identify and help you recognize the help you to understand and handle the emotions that you're having. Because once you can follow this mnemonic, right? What are the patterns? What are the emotions and the thoughts that you're consistently having? And then what are you doing? You will be able to consciously start making an effort towards changing them. Once you recognize the pattern, you can start breaking the pattern. You can start to break the cycle.
So the Evolve Pie of Emotions, this is one of our breads and butters, and I can already tell. And it just got birthed into the world, and we're so excited to share that with you. So we have digital assets that are going to be in the show notes that can help you look at an actual thought record that we've created and given to different community members, clients, etc., that you can use on your day-to-day, just as an example, and to also help if you're a visual learner to really ground what we're talking about. And we're also going to have a digital asset created for the Evolve Pie of Emotions because, you know, I get it. Not everyone loves pie, but theoretically, when you think about it, it's like pie is that thing that you just can't, you can't get away from every family gathering that you go to, like pie is that thing where it's a mathematical concept that has so much wonder underneath it, right? Pie is your emotions that your brain, and this is what I go deeper into with coaching clients, but we won't go super deep here, but how fascinating it is to see how the ego identifies and creates all these scenarios, and the brain remembers all these things where we have, oh, well, I had a bad experience. No. The brain, the body, and its connection had an experience that it perceived pain to be there. So therefore, the brain remembered that. And that's where that technology aspect comes in. It remembers a script of how to act in there to prevent you from dying. And that does not serve you anymore. So we're excited as a part of this community to help you work through reconstructing your emotions. And hopefully this episode was a great first start for each one of you. So my final takeaway for this episode is that a small mnemonic, this pie, your evolved pie of emotions, helps you understand that your emotions is what the brain is constructing. Emotions aren't just something that just magnificently happen that you don't have any control over. Matter of fact, you have more control over your emotions than right now you might think. And that, I think, is the most empowering thing when it comes to our emotional experience. Episode suggestion is 105. What is your culture and how has it shaped you? This is a fascinating one as we start to dig into some of the tendrils around cultural emotional construction. B, what is your final takeaway and your episode suggestion?
You hit the nail on the head. Emotions are made. They're not just these things that come up. They're made from the patterns of the thoughts and the emotions that we consistently have. So when you can learn how to identify them and recognize those patterns and those emotions and the thoughts, you can break them. And that's how you get a handle on them. Episode suggestion is 18, why your thoughts are screwing you.
Hey.
I love that episode. It's so good.
We do. Love it. Okay. All right. Well, if this is something that you realize you're struggling with, Bianca and I make sure that we dedicate 30 minutes on our time every single week for our community members to make sure that they have an open door, completely free, completely private and virtual, so you can join in from wherever you are in the world. If this is something that you're struggling through and you would like to actually go through something like this, please definitely click the link in the show notes. We would love to meet our listeners.
Perfect. Thank you everyone for listening. We hope this was helpful and we'll see you next time. Bye everybody.
Everyone.